There was a time when secrets remained hidden behind carefully constructed facades, when admitting our deepest failures felt like social suicide, and when the shame of past mistakes kept people trapped in cycles of deception and isolation. But what happened on Family Feud in April 2025 would demonstrate the extraordinary power of radical honesty delivered at the most unexpected moment. When 56-year-old Rebecca Thompson stood at that podium and revealed a truth about her past that no one in her family knew, she set in motion a series of events that would force everyone present to reconsider what redemption looks like, what forgiveness requires, and whether people truly deserve second chances after profound moral failures. What unfolded in those next 25 minutes would leave Steve Harvey struggling to maintain his composure, a family confronting revelations that shattered their understanding of someone they loved, and millions of viewers wrestling with questions about judgment, mercy, and the possibility of genuine transformation. Before we continue with this extraordinary story, if you value moments that challenge our understanding of redemption and demonstrate the transformative power of truth-telling, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We bring you the Family Feud moments that go beyond entertainment to explore the deepest questions about human nature, forgiveness, and the courage required to face our past honestly. Rebecca Thompson had spent the past 14 years as an addiction counselor in Phoenix, Arizona. She had dedicated herself to helping people overcome substance abuse, guiding them through the difficult process of recovery, and supporting them as they rebuilt lives that had been devastated by addiction. Her clients trusted her completely. She understood their struggles with an empathy that seemed to go beyond professional training. She knew the rationalizations addicts used to justify their behavior. She recognized the subtle signs of relapse before they became obvious. She spoke about the pain of addiction with a depth of knowledge that made people believe she truly understood what they were experiencing. What her clients did not know, what her family did not know, and what her colleagues had never suspected was that Rebecca's understanding of addiction came from direct personal experience that she had spent 16 years concealing. Before becoming a counselor, before building a career helping others recover, Rebecca had been a different person living a different life under a different name. She had been Sarah Mitchell, a pharmaceutical sales representative who had developed her own addiction to prescription painkillers. Her addiction had progressed from taking samples meant for physicians to forging prescriptions, to eventually stealing from the very doctors she was supposed to be serving. Rebecca's addiction had culminated in an incident that she had carried with her every day for 16 years. In her final months as Sarah Mitchell, desperate for pills and out of options, she had stolen a prescription pad from a physician's office. She had forged multiple prescriptions for oxycodone using the identities of real patients whose information she had access to through her sales work. One of those patients, an elderly woman named Dorothy Chen, had nearly died when her actual physician prescribed medication that created a dangerous interaction with the forged prescription Rebecca had filled in her name. The incident had triggered an investigation, but Rebecca had fled the state before authorities could connect her to the forgeries. She had relocated to Arizona, changed her name legally, and entered recovery on her own. The process had been brutal and lonely. She had no support system, no family to lean on, and the constant terror that her past would be discovered. But she had gotten clean. She had stayed clean for 16 years. And somewhere in the midst of her recovery, she had found purpose in helping others escape the prison that addiction created. She had gone back to school, earned her counseling credentials, and built a career dedicated to service and redemption. But the lie remained. Every day, she counseled clients about the importance of honesty in recovery while hiding the truth about her own past. Every time she spoke about the need to make amends for harm caused during addiction, she thought about Dorothy Chen and the other patients whose identities she had stolen. Every moment of professional success was shadowed by the knowledge that her entire current life was built on a foundation of deception and unresolved guilt. Rebecca had gathered her family for this Family Feud appearance at the urging of her daughter Jessica, who had recently graduated from college and wanted to create a special memory with her mother and extended family. The Thompson family consisted of Rebecca, her husband Mark, whom she had married 8 years earlier, her daughter Jessica from a previous relationship, her sister Linda, and her nephew Tyler. They had applied for the show hoping to win money that would help Jessica pay off student loans. The trip to Los Angeles was meant to be a celebration, a joyful family adventure. What Rebecca had not anticipated was that the simple act of standing on that stage, facing questions and cameras, would create an internal crisis that would force her to confront a decision she had been avoiding for 16 years. A decision about whether she could continue living with the weight of her secret or whether the time had finally come to tell the truth, regardless of the consequences. A decision that would be made not through careful deliberation but through a moment of emotional overwhelm that would bypass every rational consideration and force honesty she had never intended to offer. The Thompson family had performed exceptionally well through the first 3 rounds, winning all 3 decisively and building a commanding lead over the opposing family. The energy on stage was joyful and celebratory. Rebecca's daughter Jessica kept hugging her mother between rounds, expressing how proud she was and how meaningful this experience was for their family. Mark stood behind Rebecca with his hand on her shoulder, a gesture of support and affection that spoke to the strength of their marriage. But inside, Rebecca was struggling. Every moment of family unity, every expression of pride from Jessica, every loving gesture from Mark intensified the guilt she carried about the deception at the foundation of their relationship. Mark did not know about Sarah Mitchell. Jessica had no idea that her mother's past included criminal behavior and a narrow escape from prosecution. The family's trust in Rebecca was absolute, and she knew it was based on incomplete information about who she really was. The 4th round arrived, and it would determine which family advanced to fast money. The question appeared on the board, and when Rebecca saw it, she felt her composure begin to crack. The question read, "Name something people hide from their family." Rebecca was at the podium, and when she buzzed in first, Steve turned to her with his characteristic encouraging smile. The studio audience was energized, ready for another strong answer from the family that had dominated the game. Jessica was cheering for her mother. Mark was confident in whatever answer Rebecca would provide. But Rebecca stood at that podium, staring at the question, and something inside her broke. 16 years of carefully maintained deception, 16 years of guilt about Dorothy Chen and the other patients she had harmed, 16 years of building a life on a foundation of lies while counseling others about the necessity of honesty, all of it converged in that single moment facing that particular question. Instead of giving a standard answer that would have been on the board, instead of saying something safe like debt, or addiction, or past relationships, Rebecca did something that stunned everyone in the studio. She looked directly at Steve Harvey and said, in a voice that was shaking but clear, "I need to tell the truth right now. I need to confess something I have been hiding from my family for 16 years." The studio went silent. Steve's expression shifted from encouragement to concern. "Rebecca, what are you talking about? Are you okay?" Rebecca shook her head, tears already streaming down her face. "No, I am not okay. I have not been okay for 16 years. And I cannot stand here answering questions about what people hide from their families while I am hiding something from mine. I cannot do it anymore." Her family members were looking at each other in confusion and growing alarm. Jessica stepped forward, her voice filled with concern. "Mom, what is going on? What are you talking about?" Rebecca turned to face her family, her decision made in that moment with no thought for consequences or strategy. "My name is not Rebecca Thompson. It was not always Rebecca Thompson. 16 years ago, I was someone else. I was an addict who did terrible things. I stole from people. I forged prescriptions. I put someone's life in danger because I was desperate for drugs, and I did not care who I hurt." The confession came pouring out, 16 years of suppressed truth released in a torrent that could not be stopped. "I fled from where I was living because the police were investigating. I changed my name. I built this entire life as Rebecca Thompson, and I never told any of you the truth about who I was before. Jessica, you do not even know your mother's real name. Mark, you married someone without knowing the truth about her past. I have been lying to all of you every single day for years." Jessica's face showed shock and betrayal. Mark had stepped back from Rebecca, his expression unreadable. Linda was crying, her hand over her mouth in disbelief. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, uncertain whether they were witnessing a mental breakdown or something else entirely. Steve Harvey stood frozen, his cards forgotten in his hand. This was beyond anything he had experienced in over a decade of hosting. This was not a prepared revelation or a planned moment. This was raw, unscripted confession happening in real time on national television. Rebecca continued, her voice breaking but determined to finish what she had started. I have spent 14 years as an addiction counselor helping other people recover while hiding my own past. I tell my clients that recovery requires honesty, that they cannot heal while living in deception, that they have to make amends for the harm they caused. But I never made amends. I never faced the consequences of what I did. I just ran away and pretended to be someone else. She looked directly at her daughter, whose tears were now flowing freely. Jessica, I am so sorry. You deserved to know the truth. You deserved a mother who was honest with you. I justified the lie by telling myself I was protecting you, but really I was protecting myself. I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, you would not love me anymore. Then Rebecca did something that shocked everyone even more than the confession itself. She pulled her phone from her pocket and, with hands shaking so badly she could barely manage it, began to search for something. When she found it, she held up the phone so the cameras could see. It was a news article from 16 years earlier about a pharmaceutical fraud investigation and the hospitalization of Dorothy Chen. This is what I did, Rebecca said, her voice barely above a whisper. This woman, Dorothy Chen, almost died because of prescriptions I forged in her name. I never found out if she survived. I never tried to make it right. I just ran away and started over somewhere else, and I have lived with that knowledge every single day since. Steve Harvey stood in the center of the stage, processing what had just happened. The producers were undoubtedly scrambling in the control room, uncertain whether to cut to commercial or continue filming this unprecedented moment. But Steve made a decision that would define his response and potentially the trajectory of Rebecca's confession. He walked slowly to Rebecca, who was now sobbing openly, her carefully constructed life crumbling around her in front of millions of potential viewers. When he spoke, his voice carried both gravity and unexpected compassion. Rebecca, or Sarah, or whoever you are right now, I need you to help me understand what just happened. You stopped our game to confess to crimes on national television. You just told your family secrets they never knew. You potentially exposed yourself to prosecution for things that happened 16 years ago. Why? Why now? Why here? Rebecca tried to compose herself enough to answer, wiping tears that would not stop flowing. Because I counsel people every day about the importance of living in truth. I tell them that secrets keep us sick. I tell them that we cannot heal from what we refuse to face. But I was a hypocrite. I was asking my clients to do something I was not willing to do myself. And when I saw that question, when I had to think about what people hide from their families while standing next to my daughter, who does not even know my real story, something broke inside me. I could not keep lying. Steve nodded slowly, then did something remarkable. He turned to the producers and called them onto the stage again, just as he had done in previous confrontations that transcended typical game show boundaries. After a brief conversation, he returned to Rebecca and her family. We are going to do something right now that has never been done on Family Feud. We are going to stop this game. We are going to sit down together, you and your family and me, and we are going to have a conversation about what just happened. Not for entertainment, but because I think you need support right now, and your family needs help processing this, and maybe, just maybe, there is something here that other people need to witness about truth and consequences and redemption. Steve gestured for chairs to be brought onto the stage. Both families sat down together in an impromptu circle, the game forgotten, the cameras continuing to roll on what had become something far more significant than a television competition. Steve began by addressing Rebecca's family members directly. Jessica, Mark, Linda, Tyler, you just heard something shocking about someone you love. You have every right to be angry, to feel betrayed, to walk away from this situation. But before we do anything else, I want to ask you a question. Do you believe that people can change? Do you believe that someone who did terrible things 16 years ago can become a different person? Jessica was the first to speak, her voice choked with emotion. I do not know what to believe right now. My mother, the person I have trusted my entire life, just told me she has been lying to me about who she is. How am I supposed to process that? How am I supposed to know what is real and what is not? Rebecca started to respond, but Steve held up his hand. Let them speak first, Rebecca. You have had 16 years to carry this. They have had 16 seconds. Give them space to feel what they are feeling. Mark spoke next, his voice carrying hurt and confusion. Rebecca, we have been married for 8 years. In all that time, through everything we have been through together, you never trusted me enough to tell me the truth about your past. What does that say about our marriage? What does that say about us? Rebecca's response came through tears but with raw honesty. It says that I was a coward. It says that I valued my own security more than I valued being truthful with you. It says that I was so afraid of being rejected for who I really am that I chose deception over intimacy. And I am sorry. I am so deeply sorry. Steve interjected with a question that cut to the heart of the moral complexity. Rebecca, you said you have been clean for 16 years. You said you have spent 14 years helping other addicts recover. Is that true? Have you actually helped people? Rebecca nodded. Yes. I have helped hundreds of people get into recovery. I have supported them through their darkest moments. I have celebrated their sobriety milestones. I have mourned with families when clients relapsed and died. The work I have done is real, even if the foundation it was built on was a lie. Steve pressed further. And the woman you mentioned, Dorothy Chen, the one who was hospitalized because of your forged prescription, have you thought about her over these 16 years? Every single day? Rebecca said, her voice breaking. Every single day I have wondered if she survived, if she recovered, if her family ever found out what happened. Every single day I have carried the guilt of what I did to her and to the other patients whose identities I stole. That guilt is why I do what I do now. It is why I became a counselor, because I thought maybe if I helped enough people, if I saved enough lives, it would somehow balance out the harm I caused. But it does not work that way. You cannot make amends through proxy. You have to actually face what you did. Then something unexpected happened. Tyler, Rebecca's nephew who had been silent throughout the confrontation, spoke up with a perspective that shifted the entire dynamic. Aunt Rebecca, 3 years ago, when I was struggling with cocaine addiction, you helped me get into treatment. You visited me every week in rehab. You supported my family when they did not know how to help me. You probably saved my life. So I have a question for everyone here. Does the fact that she lied about her past erase the good she has done? Does it mean the help she gave me was not real? Steve nodded thoughtfully. That is the question, is it not? Can someone who built their redemption on a foundation of deception still be genuinely redeemed? Can good work erase bad actions, or do we always carry the consequences of our worst choices? Jessica, who had been quiet after her initial response, spoke again with greater composure. Mom, I am hurt that you lied to me. I am angry that you did not trust me with the truth, but I am also trying to understand what you must have been carrying all these years. The woman you are describing, the person who stole and forged prescriptions and hurt people, that is not the mother I know. The mother I know is compassionate and honest and dedicated to helping people. So either you have been faking that for 16 years, or you actually changed into someone different. Which is it? Rebecca looked at her daughter with an expression of profound gratitude for the question. I did change. The person I was 16 years ago was sick and desperate and selfish. I did terrible things because I was trapped in addiction and I could not see beyond my own immediate need for relief. But getting clean changed me. Living with the consequences of my actions changed me. Trying to make meaning out of my mistakes by helping others changed me. I am not the same person I was, but that does not erase what I did. It does not give me the right to hide from accountability. Steve Harvey, who had been facilitating the conversation with remarkable sensitivity, offered his own perspective. I have been in entertainment for over 30 years. I have seen people at their best and their worst. I have watched people destroy their lives and then rebuild them. And here is what I have learned: redemption is complicated. It is not clean. It is not simple. People want to believe that you either deserve forgiveness or you do not, that you are either good or bad, but the truth is messier than that. He continued, addressing both Rebecca and the audience. Rebecca did terrible things. She hurt people. She broke laws. She fled from consequences. Those are facts, and nothing about her 16 years of sobriety and service erases those facts. But she also genuinely changed. She rebuilt her life. She helped hundreds of people recover from the same disease that destroyed her own life. Those are also facts. So the question is not whether she deserves complete forgiveness or complete condemnation. The question is what happens next. What does accountability look like now? What does making amends look like after 16 years? Then Steve addressed Rebecca directly with a question that would shape everything that followed. Rebecca, you confessed on national television. This episode is going to air. Millions of people are going to see this. The authorities in whatever state you fled from are probably going to see this. You may very well face prosecution for what you did 16 years ago. So I need to ask you, are you prepared for the consequences of the truth you just told? Because you cannot take it back now. Rebecca nodded, her expression showing both terror and relief. I know. I have been preparing for consequences for 16 years, living in fear every day that someone would discover the truth. At least now the fear is over. At least now I am not living a lie anymore. Whatever happens, it will be better than carrying this secret. The episode did not air immediately. The network executives, the producers, Steve Harvey, and ultimately Rebecca herself engaged in extensive discussions about whether and how to broadcast what had been recorded. Legal experts were consulted about the implications of airing a confession to crimes. Mental health professionals were brought in to assess Rebecca's well-being. Discussions were held about the potential impact on viewers, on Rebecca's family, and on Rebecca's clients who had trusted her with their recovery. After 6 weeks of deliberation, a decision was made. The episode would air in edited form, with extensive context provided before and after the confession. The network would partner with addiction recovery organizations to provide resources for viewers. Counselors would be available through a hotline for anyone triggered by the content. And most importantly, Rebecca would participate in a follow-up special where she could address what had happened in the weeks since the taping and what she had decided to do about her past. When the episode finally aired 10 weeks after the taping, it was unlike anything Family Feud had ever broadcast. The confession segment was presented with careful framing about addiction, recovery, and the complexity of redemption. Phone numbers for addiction hotlines and recovery resources were displayed throughout, and the episode ended not with a winner being declared, but with a message that viewers could see the follow-up special the next week to learn what had happened after Rebecca's confession. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, addiction recovery hotlines reported a 300% increase in calls. People who had been hiding their own addictions from their families were inspired by Rebecca's courage to seek help. Family members of addicts who had thought recovery was impossible gained new hope, seeing that transformation was real even if it was complicated. But there was also intense debate. Some viewers believed that Rebecca should be prosecuted regardless of her 16 years of sobriety and service. They argued that allowing people to escape consequences by changing their names and starting over undermined the justice system and denied victims their right to accountability. Others believed that Rebecca's transformation demonstrated the possibility of genuine rehabilitation and that prosecuting someone for crimes committed 16 years ago, while in active addiction, would serve no constructive purpose. The follow-up special, which aired 1 week after the initial episode, provided answers to the questions millions of viewers were asking. Rebecca appeared with Steve Harvey to explain what had happened in the weeks since her confession. She revealed that she had voluntarily contacted law enforcement in the state where she had committed the prescription fraud. She had provided full details of her actions, identified herself as Sarah Mitchell, and offered to cooperate completely with any investigation or prosecution. She also revealed that she had hired a private investigator to find Dorothy Chen, the patient who had been hospitalized due to Rebecca's forged prescription. The investigator had located Dorothy, now 89 years old and living in a nursing facility. With Dorothy's permission, Rebecca had traveled to meet her face-to-face to make direct amends for the harm she had caused 16 years earlier. The meeting between Rebecca and Dorothy became the emotional centerpiece of the follow-up special. Dorothy appeared via video recording to share her perspective on the encounter. "When this woman came to see me and told me what she had done all those years ago, I was shocked," Dorothy said, her voice frail but clear. "I remembered being hospitalized. I remembered the doctors being confused about medications I had not taken. I remembered feeling violated that someone had used my identity. But I also saw the remorse in her eyes. I saw that she had carried this guilt for 16 years, and I made a choice to forgive her. Not because what she did was acceptable, but because holding on to anger for 16 years has not served me, and it would not serve me now." Dorothy's forgiveness did not erase the legal consequences Rebecca faced. The district attorney in the jurisdiction where the crimes occurred decided to prosecute, but they offered a plea agreement that acknowledged Rebecca's 16 years of sobriety and service. Rebecca pleaded guilty to prescription fraud and identity theft. She was sentenced to 2 years of supervised probation, 500 hours of community service specifically focused on addiction education, and restitution to all the patients whose identities she had stolen. Rebecca accepted the plea agreement, publicly stating that she was grateful for the opportunity to be held accountable while still being able to continue her recovery work. She also made a decision to be completely transparent about her past with her employer, her professional licensing board, and all her current clients. Some clients chose to find new counselors, feeling betrayed by the deception, but most chose to continue working with Rebecca, stating that her lived experience and genuine understanding of recovery was more valuable than a pristine past. The impact on Rebecca's family was complex and ongoing. Jessica struggled with the revelation about her mother's past. She entered therapy to process feelings of betrayal and confusion about which version of her mother was real. But over time, with support and honest communication, Jessica came to understand that both versions were real. Her mother had been Sarah Mitchell, an addict who did terrible things. And her mother was also Rebecca Thompson, a counselor who helped people recover. The same person could contain both realities. Mark faced his own difficult decision about whether to remain in a marriage that had been built on incomplete information. He separated from Rebecca for 4 months while he processed his feelings and determined whether trust could be rebuilt. Ultimately, he chose to stay in the marriage, explaining in a later interview that Rebecca's courage to tell the truth, even when it destroyed her carefully constructed safety, demonstrated more integrity than 16 years of perfect behavior built on lies. 6 months after the episode aired, Rebecca published an open letter describing what she had learned from her experience. "I thought I had found redemption through service," she wrote. "I thought that if I helped enough people, if I lived a good life for long enough, it would somehow balance the scales for what I had done, but real redemption does not work that way. Real redemption requires actually facing what you did, making amends to the people you harmed, and accepting consequences regardless of how much time has passed. You cannot heal from what you refuse to acknowledge." 1 year after the confession, a comprehensive study was published examining the impact of Rebecca's story on addiction recovery outcomes. Researchers found that recovery programs that incorporated her story into their curriculum saw significant improvements in client honesty about their past behaviors. Clients who watched Rebecca's confession were more likely to disclose their own histories of criminal activity during addiction, more willing to engage in making amends, and more committed to complete honesty in their recovery process. The study also documented an unexpected benefit. Family members of people in recovery who watched Rebecca's story reported increased understanding of addiction as a disease rather than a moral failing. Seeing Rebecca's genuine transformation from Sarah Mitchell, the criminal addict, to Rebecca Thompson, the skilled counselor, helped families understand that recovery was possible even after severe moral failures. 5 years later, Rebecca's story had become a cornerstone of addiction recovery education. Her willingness to publicly confess her past, accept consequences, and continue her recovery work while being completely transparent provided a model for how people in long-term recovery could integrate their past into their present without being defined by their worst actions. Rebecca continued her work as an addiction counselor, but with a significant change. She now specialized in helping people in recovery navigate the process of making amends for serious harm they had caused during active addiction. She worked with clients who had committed crimes, who had abandoned their children, who had destroyed relationships and careers. She helped them understand that making amends was not about earning forgiveness or escaping consequences, but about taking responsibility and doing what was right regardless of the outcome. During one presentation at a national addiction conference, Rebecca shared the lesson that had emerged from her Family Feud confession. "I thought I was protecting my family by hiding my past from them. I thought I was protecting my career by keeping my history secret. I thought I was protecting myself by becoming someone else. But secrets do not protect us, they imprison us. Living in fear of discovery is not freedom, it is just a different kind of cage. Real freedom comes from living in complete honesty, even when that honesty brings difficult consequences." 10 years after that unexpected confession on Family Feud, a documentary was produced examining the long-term impact of Rebecca's decision to tell the truth on national television. The documentary traced her journey from Sarah Mitchell to Rebecca Thompson, and then to the integrated person who no longer needed to hide either identity. It featured interviews with dozens of people whose recovery had been influenced by Rebecca's example, from clients she had counseled to strangers who had seen the episode and been inspired to seek help or make their own amends. The documentary's most powerful segment featured a reunion between Rebecca and Dorothy Chen, now 99 years old and in declining health. Dorothy spoke about the choice to forgive Rebecca and what it had meant to her. "Forgiveness did not mean saying what she did was acceptable," Dorothy explained. "It meant choosing not to let her actions continue to harm me. It meant acknowledging that the person who harmed me had genuinely changed, and it meant giving her the same grace I hope someone would give me for my worst moments." In the documentary's closing scene, Rebecca reflects on the decade since her confession with the wisdom that comes from sustained accountability and continued growth. "When I stopped the Family Feud game to confess my past, I was not trying to be brave. I was not thinking about the consequences or the impact. I was just overwhelmed by the weight of carrying a secret that contradicted everything I was teaching my clients about recovery. But what I learned is that sometimes our most transformative moments come from impulses we do not fully understand in the moment." She continues with conviction born from experience. "People ask me if I regret confessing on television, if I wish I had handled it differently. The answer is no. Confessing publicly, facing consequences publicly, rebuilding my life with complete transparency, that was the hardest and most valuable thing I have ever done. Because now when I tell my clients that recovery requires rigorous honesty, they know I am not asking them to do something I was not willing to do myself. My confession gave me credibility that 16 years of perfect behavior built on lies never could have given me." The documentary ends with a statistic that captures the far-reaching impact of one moment of radical honesty. Since Rebecca's confession aired on Family Feud, over 12,000 people in recovery have publicly shared their own stories of crimes committed during active addiction, accepted responsibility for their actions, and worked to make amends to those they harmed. Survey data suggests that people who engage in this kind of radical honesty about their past have relapse rates 43% lower than those who maintain secrecy about their history. As the screen fades to black, Steve Harvey's voice offers a final reflection from an interview conducted for the documentary. "When Rebecca stopped our game to confess her past, I did not know what was going to happen. I did not know if it would help her or destroy her. I did not know if her family would forgive her or if she would face serious legal consequences. But I knew that what I was witnessing was real. It was messy and complicated and painful, but it was genuine. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can offer people is the space to be genuine, even when that genuineness is uncomfortable for everyone involved. The story of Rebecca Thompson's shocking confession reminds us that redemption is not linear, that honesty requires courage, even when it destroys the safety we have carefully constructed, and that real transformation demands we integrate our past into our present rather than hiding who we used to be. Her confession demonstrated that secrets keep us sick, that healing requires facing what we have done regardless of how much time has passed, and that the courage to tell the truth, even when it costs us everything, is ultimately the only path to genuine freedom. If this story resonated with you and reminded you that honesty is the foundation of all meaningful change, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We share these powerful moments because they challenge us to examine our own relationship with truth and inspire us to live with greater integrity, even when honesty is difficult. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that our past does not have to define our future, but it does need to be acknowledged and integrated honestly if we hope to build something genuine. Remember that the secrets we carry to protect ourselves often become the prisons that prevent us from living freely, and that sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is tell the truth even when we cannot predict or control the consequences.